An elderly millionaire died with an empty bank account. When her arrogant son searched the mansion, in a hidden diary, he discovered what she had secretly done with her fortune and collapsed. James Blackwood stood before his mother's mansion, adjusting his Italian silk tie. At 45, he was used to being in control. As CEO of his own company, he always got what he wanted. And today, he would finally claim his mother Victoria's $50 million fortune. "Dad, this place is ancient," said his 15-year-old son Tyler, not looking up from his phone. "Grandma should have bought a modern house instead of keeping this museum." James smiled, like father, like son. They both knew the value of money and success. Victoria had never understood that, always talking about giving back and social responsibility. Well, he would put her fortune to better use. "Mr. Blackwood?" A short man in a gray suit approached them. "I'm Michael Weber, your mother's attorney. We need to discuss some urgent matters." Inside Victoria's office, James sat in her leather chair, already planning which charities he would cut off first. His mother had wasted too much money on lost causes. "There's no easy way to say this," Weber began, shuffling through papers. "The accounts are empty." James laughed. "What do you mean, empty?" "Your mother's personal accounts, investment portfolios, everything. There's nothing left, just this mansion." "That's impossible. She was worth $50 million. James slammed his fist on the desk. "She was until about 5 years ago. Then she began systematically moving all her assets. Everything was done legally. I have the paperwork here." James's hands shook as he grabbed the documents. Numbers danced before his eyes. Massive transfers, donations, investments in social projects. All of it gone. "She can't have done this. There was a previous will. I saw it." His voice cracked. "Your mother changed it shortly before her death. You have 30 days to decide about the mansion. After that, it goes to a charitable foundation." Tyler looked up from his phone for the first time. "Wait, does this mean we're not getting anything?" James stormed out of the office, his mind racing. This had to be a mistake. His mother wouldn't leave him with nothing. She knew how much he needed that money. In her private study, he began pulling out drawers, searching frantically. Victoria must have hidden something, left some clue. Behind her old books, he found a worn leather diary. As he opened it, a photograph fell out. James recognized himself, 20 years younger, teaching at a community center. He had forgotten about those days before he understood what really mattered in life. The diary's first entry hit him like a punch to the gut. "My dear James, you've lost your way. Money has poisoned your heart, just as it once poisoned mine. But I found redemption through giving. Now it's your turn to learn the hardest lesson of all." James sank into his mother's chair, the diary trembling in his hands. What had she done? And why? A knock at the door made him jump. Helena, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway, watching him with knowing eyes. "Your mother left something else for you," she said quietly. "But you're not ready for it yet." Before James could respond, Tyler burst in. "Dad, you won't believe what I just found. There's a whole room of files about Grandma's charity work. But look at this. There's a document showing she changed her will last year. We were supposed to get everything." James stared at the diary in his hands, then at the empire of papers surrounding him. His mother, whom he had dismissed as a foolish old woman wasting her fortune, had orchestrated something much bigger than he could imagine. And somehow, he knew this was just the beginning of her final lesson. James spent hours reading his mother's diary. Each page revealed more of Victoria's disappointment in what he had become. Her words cut deep. "Today I watched James mock a homeless man outside his office. My son, who once taught underprivileged children, now looks at the poor with contempt. Where did I go wrong?" He slammed the diary shut. She had no right to judge him. He'd built his company from nothing, fought his way to the top. "Mr. Blackwood?" Helena stood at the door. "Mr. Sterling is here to see you." Maxwell Sterling walked in like he owned the place. His real estate company had been trying to buy the mansion for years. "James, sorry about Victoria. She was quite a woman." Sterling's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'll make this quick. I'm offering $20 million for the property. The mansion's not for sale. Don't be hasty. You have no inheritance. Your company's struggling. And this place." Sterling gestured around. "It's falling apart. Victoria rejected progress. Don't make the same mistake." Before James could respond, they heard shouting from the garden. Through the window, he saw Tyler with a group of his friends, laughing at another boy who was picking up scattered books from the ground. "That's Marcus," Helena said quietly. "My son, he's on a scholarship at Tyler's school." James watched his son, seeing himself in every cruel gesture. When had they become like this? "Think about my offer," Sterling said. "You have bigger problems than an old house. Your mother's charitable foundation is reviewing all past donations. If they find anything irregular..." The threat hung in the air. James had used his mother's donations for tax write-offs, bending rules he thought she'd never notice. After Sterling left, James returned to the diary. More pages were missing. Someone had torn them out carefully, deliberately. "Looking for these?" Helena held up several worn pages. "Victoria told me to keep them safe. You're not ready for what they contain. Who are you really? Why did my mother trust you more than me? You'll understand when you're ready to see the truth. Like what's happening outside right now." Through the window, James saw Tyler recording a video, mocking the mansion. "Check out Grandma's ancient prison. No wonder she went crazy and gave away all her money." James felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Shame. A new entry in the diary caught his eye. "I've made a terrible mistake, raising James to worship money above all else. But it's not too late. Even if I'm no longer here, this house holds secrets that will teach him what matters most." The sound of a car made James look up. A sleek BMW pulled into the driveway. Sarah Parker stepped out, the director of one of Victoria's largest charitable projects. She'd been trying to meet with him since the funeral. "Your mother," Helena said softly, "asked her to come today. She's part of the plan." "What plan? What did my mother do?" "She spent her last 5 years creating something extraordinary. The empty accounts? That's just the beginning. Victoria knew you'd only learn the truth if you lost everything first." James looked at his reflection in the window. His designer suit, his arrogant stance. When had he become someone his younger self would despise? Tyler's laughter echoed from the garden as he continued mocking the family legacy. Like father, like son. But maybe that was the problem. The diary felt heavy in James's hands. Somewhere in these pages, his mother had left a message that would change everything. But first, he had to face the hardest truth of all. She had seen him clearly, even when he'd refused to see himself. Sarah Parker wasted no time with pleasantries. "Your mother built something amazing, Mr. Blackwood, and you're about to destroy it. If you're here about the donations, they're gone. Find another rich person to fund your projects." "You don't understand. Victoria didn't just give away money. She created a network of self-sustaining social enterprises, but they need the mansion as their headquarters." James laughed. "The mansion? This is ridiculous." "Dad," Tyler burst in. "The school principal called. They're making me volunteer at some community center as punishment. This is so unfair." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Actually, that's one of your mother's centers. She set this up months ago." Before James could respond, Helena entered with more diary pages. "You need to see these now. The entry was dated 3 years ago. Today I received the diagnosis. Terminal. The doctors give me 5 years at most. It's not enough time to fix my mistakes with James, but perhaps enough to leave him a different kind of inheritance." James felt the room spin. She knew she was dying? Why didn't she tell me? "Because you weren't listening," Helena said. "When was the last time you really talked to her?" A memory flashed. His mother trying to discuss her medical tests. Him cutting her off to take a business call. Sarah opened her laptop. "Look at these numbers. Victoria's social projects generate revenue. Every dollar she invested returns 3 times the amount, funding education and job training." "That's impossible," James muttered. "The same way it's impossible that your company's stocks dropped 40% after news of her empty accounts?" James stared at her. "How do you know about my company?" "Victoria knew everything, including how you used her donations for tax evasion." Tyler, who had been texting, suddenly looked up. "Dad, is that true?" James felt the walls closing in. His son's question hurt more than any accusation. Sarah continued. "Sterling's development company wants this land for a reason. The whole area is about to boom because of Victoria's investments. She transformed the community while everyone thought she was just giving handouts." Helena placed another diary page on the desk. "James thinks I've lost my mind, giving away his inheritance. He doesn't see that I'm actually building his legacy. One day, he'll understand that true wealth isn't in bank accounts. There's more, Helena said. But first, you need to visit the garden. Outside, James found a thriving community garden where neighborhood kids worked alongside retirees. Marcus, Helena's son, was teaching younger children about composting. Tyler stood awkwardly at the edge. This is where I have to volunteer? Yes, Helena said. Just like your father did 20 years ago. Another memory. Teaching kids about plants, feeling like he was making a difference. When had money become more important than that feeling? Sarah pointed to a small building behind the garden. That's where it starts. Victoria's first project. She called it Seeds of Change. Inside, James found carefully organized files. His mother had mapped out every donation, every investment, every life changed. It wasn't charity, it was transformation. Sterling knows, Sarah said. That's why he wants the mansion. These projects are about to make this the most valuable area in town, not through luxury developments, but through community growth. James picked up a photo of his mother, surrounded by smiling children. In her final years, while he was chasing more wealth, she had been quietly building something priceless. There's one more thing, Helena said, holding another diary page. She left instructions about Sterling and about your company. James took the page, his hands shaking. Everything he thought he knew about his mother, about success, about himself, it was all about to change. The diary page revealed something that made James sit down hard. This can't be right. But it is, Sarah said. I'm your half-sister. Your father had a relationship before marrying your mother. Victoria found me 5 years ago. Tyler, who had been sulking about his volunteer work, suddenly paid attention. Wait, I have an aunt? Victoria did more than find me, Sarah continued. She funded my education, helped me build the community center. She said it was her way of fixing old wrongs. James stared at the family photo on the wall. His father's stern face held new secrets. Why didn't she tell me? She tried. Remember that dinner last year, when you were too busy checking stock prices on your phone? The memory stung. His mother had said she had important family news. He dismissed it as another lecture about his lifestyle. Mr. Blackwood, Helena interrupted. The school principal is here about Tyler. In the study, Principal Roberts didn't mince words. Tyler created a social media post mocking scholarship students, including Marcus. They don't belong at our school anyway, Tyler muttered. That's exactly why you'll spend 2 hours daily at the community center, the principal said. Starting today. After he left, Helena spoke softly. Victoria arranged this months ago. She knew Tyler was following your path. James watched his son storm out. What do you mean, my path? Helena pulled out an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, Local teacher leaves education for business world. You were different once, she said. Victoria kept every article about your teaching work. Sarah added, the community center needs teachers. Amazing how that worked out. Before James could respond, Sterling called. Time's running out, James. My offer expires tomorrow. Oh, and those tax documents you're worried about? I have copies. James slammed the phone down. He's blackmailing me. No, Sarah said. He's testing you. Just like Victoria planned. She opened her laptop, showing a document that made James's blood run cold. Evidence of every questionable business deal he'd ever made. Mom kept this? Tyler asked from the doorway. He'd returned quietly, hearing everything. She kept everything. Helena said, including something about your grandfather. The next diary entry shocked them all. James's father isn't dead as everyone believes. He's hiding in Europe, controlling things from shadows, including Sterling. That's impossible, James whispered. He died 10 years ago. Sarah shook her head. I met him last month. He's very much alive. Tyler sat down, his social media drama forgotten. Dad, what's really going on? James looked at his son, seeing his own confusion reflected. The arrogant businessman facade was cracking. Victoria left this for today specifically, Helena said, handing him another diary page. She knew you'd need it when the truth about your father emerged. The entry was brief but devastating. My dearest James, forgive me for the pain these revelations bring. But you can't build a future on lies. It's time you knew who your father really is, and more importantly, who you really are. Sarah touched his arm gently. There's more. The community center, it's built on land your father tried to destroy 20 years ago. The the same land Sterling wants now. James looked out the window at the garden where Tyler had mocked Marcus earlier. Everything connected in ways he was only beginning to understand. Victoria didn't just leave a series of revelations, Helena said. She left a choice, and you have 26 days left to make it. The mansion suddenly felt like a chessboard, and James realized he'd been a pawn in a game his mother had masterfully designed. But why? The answer lay in the garden, where Tyler now stood awkwardly watching Marcus teach younger kids. Like father, like son. But which father? Which path? Sarah's next words changed everything. Mom left one more thing. A video we're supposed to watch together, as a family. Victoria's face filled the screen, recorded months before her death. If you're watching this, you've learned about Sarah. But that's just the beginning. The video paused as James's phone rang. His company's board demanded an emergency meeting. Turn off the video, he said. I have to handle this first. No, Sarah replied firmly. That's exactly what Victoria knew you'd do. Business first, truth later. Watch. Victoria continued. James, remember when you taught at Thompson Elementary? You came home every day talking about changing lives. Then your father reappeared. James felt his chest tighten. Those memories hurt. You have to go, Helena interrupted. Your company's shares are falling. But first, read this. She handed him another diary page. Today, James made his first million. He called to brag about it, not knowing I was sitting in my oncologist's office receiving my diagnosis. Money has become his only measure of success. I have 5 years left to change that. The company meeting was brutal. The board questioned every decision, every number. His father's old business partners wanted him out. Face it, James, the chairman said. Without your mother's backing, you're finished. Returning to the mansion, James found Tyler sitting alone in the garden. I watched the rest of Grandma's video, Tyler said quietly. Did you really used to be a teacher? That was a long time ago. Marcus showed me the community center's records. You helped build their first classroom. Before James could respond, Sterling pulled up in his car. Time's up on the offer, James? Oh, and Sarah? Your funding is running out. Shame if your projects had to close. You can't threaten us, Sarah stood her ground. No? Ask your brother about the real source of his company's initial funding. Ask him what deal he made with your father. Tyler looked at James. Dad, what's he talking about? James felt the walls closing in. Another diary page waited on his desk. James thinks his first million came from smart investments. He doesn't know his father orchestrated everything, turning my son into what he is now. My biggest failure was letting it happen. Sarah opened her laptop. Look at these records. Every smart investment, every lucky break, it was all engineered. Why? James asked. Why would he do this? Because, Helena said, he needed you to become exactly like him, someone who values money above everything. Tyler spoke up. The kids at the center today, they were like that boy in the video, the one Dad used to teach. James remembered. Michael, a struggling student who blossomed in his class. He'd promised to help more kids like him. Victoria left something in the greenhouse, Helena said. You're ready to see it now. Behind the greenhouse's old shelves, they found a hidden safe. The combination, Sarah said, is the date you quit teaching. James's hands shook as he entered the numbers. Inside was a single envelope marked, when you remember who you were. There's more, Helena added. Victoria didn't just leave plans for the community. She left a way to save your company, but only if you choose the right path. Sterling's car was still visible through the garden gates. He was waiting for James's decision. Sarah touched her brother's arm. Mom knew this day would come, when you'd have to choose between being our father's son or your own man. The envelope felt heavy in James's hands. 25 days remained until the mansion's fate was decided. But maybe that wasn't the real deadline. Tyler asked, "What are we going to do?" For the first time in years, James didn't have a ready answer about money or success. Instead, he looked at the classroom he'd helped build, now visible through the garden trees. Victoria's voice from the video echoed in his mind. The real inheritance isn't in the bank accounts, James. It's in the choice you're about to make. James opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a USB drive and a note. Watch this alone. On his laptop screen, Victoria appeared again, but this time looking healthier, from before her illness. James, if you're watching this, you found the safe. I'm recording this the day I discovered what your father did to change you. How he used money to corrupt my teaching son into a copy of himself. James almost closed the laptop, but Victoria's next words stopped him. I found the contract, James. The one you signed, giving him control of your future in exchange for business success. You were so proud of your first million that you never questioned where it really came from. A knock interrupted. Tyler stood at the door. Dad, something's happening at the community center. At the center, they found a crowd gathering. Sterling stood with city officials. Condemning the building, Sterling announced. Safety violations. Shame, really. Guess these kids need a new place. Sarah pushed through the crowd. This is illegal. We just passed inspection. James watched the children being let out. Marcus helped younger kids carry their books. Dad, Tyler said quietly. I know these kids now. They're not so different from me. Another memory hit James, his father's words 20 years ago. Teaching? That's for people who can't succeed in real business. Helena appeared with more diary pages. Victoria wrote these the day she discovered your father's plan. The entries shook him. My son sold his soul without realizing it. The contract James signed wasn't just for money. It was a pledge to continue his father's legacy of putting profit above people. In exchange, his father's business network would ensure James's success. You knew about this? James asked Helena. Victoria hired me to help undo what your father did. I'm not just a housekeeper. I'm a former corporate lawyer. I left that world for the same reason you should have stayed a teacher. Sterling approached with a new document. Final offer, James. Sell now or watch everything collapse. Your father doesn't like waiting. My father? So you admit working for him? Of course, someone had to keep you on the right path. Victoria nearly ruined everything with her charity work. Teaching you compassion again? That would void the contract. Tyler had been recording everything on his phone. Dad, listen to this. He played back Sterling's admission about working with James's father. Sarah studied the footage. This is proof of conspiracy. We can fight back. Fight? Sterling laughed. Check your company's stock, James. Your father's friends control everything now. But James wasn't listening. He was watching Marcus organize the displaced children into study groups on the center's lawn. Tyler, he said, why are you recording all this? Because Grandma's diary said to document everything. The pages in my room, they're instructions for exposing the truth. James stared at his son. Victoria left you pages too? She knew Dad would need proof, Sarah explained. Evidence of how your father manipulated everything. Helena stepped forward. There's a second safe, behind the garden wall. The combination is your son's birthday, a date your father never bothered to remember. Inside, they found decades of evidence. Every manipulated deal, every forced decision. Victoria spent years gathering this, Helena said. While you thought she was just doing charity work, she was building a case. But why wait until now? James asked. Sarah pointed to Sterling talking to reporters. Because you needed to see the truth yourself, all of it. Tyler showed his phone to James. Dad, I've been posting about the community center. It's going viral. People are offering to help. The final diary page for that day read, James's father thinks money is power. But he never understood that real power comes from the lives we change. My son will remember this when he sees his own child learning the same lesson. James looked at Tyler, who was organizing an online fundraiser for the center. Like father, like son. But which father would he choose to be? Victoria's voice played from another video file. There's a third option, James. Not your father's greed or my charity. Something that proves business and compassion can work together. Sarah opened her laptop. Look at these numbers. Every social project Mom started generates revenue. Not through donations. Through sustainable business models. The spreadsheets showed remarkable figures. Job training centers that became profitable businesses. Educational programs that created skilled workers. Community gardens supplying local restaurants. These aren't charities, Helena explained. They're social enterprises. Victoria turned every donation into an investment. Tyler burst in. Dad, my video about the community center hit 100,000 views. People are offering to invest. James studied the business plans Victoria had left. Each project didn't just help people. It created sustainable income. Sterling doesn't know about this part, Sarah said. Mom kept these records separate. The real value isn't the mansion's land, it's the network of businesses she built. The next diary entry explained more. James thinks I've gone soft, giving away money. He doesn't see I'm building something bigger than his father's empire. Real wealth multiplies when shared. A notification popped up on James's phone. His company's stock was falling again. That's not accident, Helena said. Your father's forcing your hand, but Victoria left you a way out. She revealed more documents. Victoria had quietly bought shares in James's company through her social enterprises. Combined, they owned a controlling interest. She couldn't give you the shares directly, Sarah explained. The contract with your father prevented that. But these businesses you thought were just charities? They're your real shareholders now. Tyler was still focused on his phone. Marcus helped me make another video. We're showing how the community center changes lives. James watched his son's latest post. Tyler interviewed students who'd found purpose through the center's programs. The comments were flooding in with support. Sterling called again. Last chance, James. The demolition crew arrives tomorrow. Wait, James said. Show me the real development plans. Sterling's blueprints revealed the truth. The luxury mall was just a cover. They planned to build a private prison. That's why they want this location, Helena said. Your father's company runs private prisons. Where do you think he got his start? James felt sick. The contract he'd signed 20 years ago, he'd never read the fine print. Sarah pointed to Tyler's viral videos. People are watching now, we can fight this. But my company, James started. Isn't what you think, Helena interrupted. She showed him Victoria's final business plan. These social enterprises, combined, they're worth more than your current company. Victoria proved ethical business works better. Tyler looked up from his phone. Dad, remember what you said in your old teaching video about every kid deserving a chance? James did remember. Victoria had kept that video too. The diary's next entry hit hard. James will face a choice, his father's blood money or something truly valuable. The mansion isn't the real estate at stake. It's the foundation for a new kind of business empire, one built on lifting people up instead of pushing them down. Sterling's deadline loomed. The demolition crews were ready. But Tyler's videos had started something. Local businesses were pledging support. Former students were sharing stories about the center's impact. Mom left one more thing, Sarah said, revealing a hidden panel in the study wall. Inside was a document that changed everything. James looked at his son, still passionately recording the community's story. At his sister, who'd dedicated her life to continuing their mother's work. At Helena, who'd given up corporate law to help build something meaningful. The choice Victoria had prepared him for wasn't just about money, it was about legacy. Dad? Tyler asked. What are we gonna do? For the first time in years, James knew exactly what to do. Not because it was profitable, but because it was right. James called an emergency board meeting at his company. This time, he was ready. My mother didn't just leave empty bank accounts, he announced. She left us a business opportunity that makes our current model obsolete. The board members laughed until Sarah presented Victoria's financial reports. The social enterprise's profits silenced every skeptic in the room. These community projects generate triple the return of our current investments, James explained, and they do it legally, ethically, and sustainably. Outside, Sterling watched the board meeting through the glass walls. His phone rang. Sir, we have a problem. Your son is changing everything. Tyler's latest video had reached 1 million views. Local news stations were covering the story. Teen exposes community center crisis, reveals larger truth. Dad, Tyler rushed into the boardroom. Marcus and I interviewed your old students. Look at these responses. The screen filled with comments from people whose lives James had touched as a teacher. Each one remembered something he'd forgotten. The board needs to see this, Sarah said. She played Victoria's final business presentation. The numbers were undeniable. Victoria had created a new business model that transformed communities while generating significant profits. Every charity project was actually a carefully planned investment. This is why Sterling wants the land, Helena explained to the board. These social enterprises are about to revolutionize how business works in this city. James's phone buzzed. His father's first direct message in years. You're making a mistake. Remember our contract. But James had already shown the contract to his company's lawyers. Victoria's evidence proved it was signed under false pretenses. Your father knew this day would come, Helena said. Victoria planned for it. That's why she left the video messages in sequence, each revelation at the right time. Sterling burst into the boardroom. Think carefully about your next move, James. Some decisions can't be undone. You mean like choosing money over teaching? James replied. Or signing away my soul to become rich. Tyler stood beside his father. I posted everything, Sterling, about the private prison plans, about your connection to my grandfather. People are sharing it everywhere. The board members watched Tyler's viral videos. The story of Victoria's secret business empire captivated them. A model that made money by helping people? It seemed impossible, yet the proof was right there. Sarah unveiled the final part of Victoria's plan. Mom didn't just build isolated projects, she created an interconnected network of social enterprises. Each one supports the others. That's why the mansion matters, Helena added. It's not just a building, it's the hub that connects everything. The board chairman spoke up. James, your mother's model could transform this company, but you'll have to choose now. We can't wait any longer. Sterling made one last attempt. Your father built this company, you're throwing away his legacy. No, James replied. I'm choosing a better one. He looked at Tyler, who was still recording. His son had learned in days what had taken him years to understand. The final video from Victoria played on the boardroom screen. James, watching you choose profit over purpose broke my heart. But watching Tyler follow the same path, that's when I knew I had to act. This isn't just about business. It's about breaking a cycle. Sterling's phone rang again. James could hear his father's angry voice from across the room. But James wasn't listening. He was watching his son shake hands with Marcus, planning their next video about the community center's impact. The board waited for his decision. 20 days remained until the mansion deadline. But the real choice, the one Victoria had prepared him for, had to be made now. James stood before the board. We're restructuring the entire company, effective immediately. Victoria's social enterprise model becomes our core business. Sterling stormed out, already dialing his phone. Sir, he's gone rogue. We need to act now. The board approved the changes with a single condition. James had to prove the model worked within 30 days. Back at the mansion, Tyler and Marcus were organizing an open house. People want to see what Grandma built, Tyler explained. Every social media post brings more supporters. Sarah spread Victoria's business plans across the study. Each project connects to the others. The job training center supplies workers to the sustainable businesses. Those businesses fund education programs. The education programs create new entrepreneurs. And it all centers on the mansion, Helena added. Victoria designed it as a hub where everything connects. James's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Business leaders wanted to invest in the new model. Media outlets requested interviews about the viral story. Your father's calling again, Helena said. Let him, James replied. I'm done hiding from the truth. Tyler rushed in with his laptop. Dad, look at these comments. Your old students are organizing a rally to save the community center. The next diary entry seemed written for this moment. James will face his father's fury, but by then, he'll understand that true power isn't in destroying lives for profit. It's in building something that lifts everyone. Sterling returned with city officials. The mansion violates multiple codes. It'll be condemned by morning. Actually, Sarah smiled. Mom got historical landmark status approved last year. The paperwork just came through. James watched his son recording everything. Tyler had transformed from a spoiled teenager into someone who cared about making a difference. The social enterprise network is already profitable. Helena showed James the latest figures. Victoria proved it works. Now you just have to scale it. Sterling made his final move. The contract your father holds, it doesn't just bind you. It binds your son's inheritance too. Tyler stepped forward. I don't want that kind of inheritance. The mansion's front gates opened as community members arrived for the open house. Former students, local business owners, families helped by Victoria's projects. They filled the garden. Mom knew this would happen, Sarah said. The community defending itself. That's why she built everything around connection. James found another video from Victoria. When you see people coming together like this, remember your teaching days. Remember how it felt to build something meaningful. That's the real fortune I'm leaving you. Sterling's phone rang one last time. The caller ID showed James's father. But before Sterling could answer, Tyler took the phone. Grandfather, watch my next video. See what real legacy looks like. The mansion buzzed with activity. Each room showcased a different project Victoria had built. The garden hosted community meetings. The garage became a startup incubator. Your father's empire is built on keeping people down, Helena said. Victoria built one that lifts people up. James watched Marcus leading tours, explaining how the social enterprises worked. The boy his son once mocked had become his teacher. Sarah pulled James aside. There's one more safe, behind the main hall painting. Mom said to open it when you were ready to face Dad. Inside, they found documents that changed everything. Victoria hadn't just built an alternative business model. She'd created a way to transform his father's entire empire. Tyler joined them, phone still recording. Dad? People are asking what we'll call the new company. James looked at his son, then at the community filling the mansion with purpose. The choice Victoria prepared him for wasn't just about business. It was about becoming the father and the man he was meant to be. The documents in the final safe stunned everyone. Victoria hadn't just tracked James's father's manipulation. She'd found his weakness. Your father's entire empire, Sarah explained, depends on government contracts. Contracts that require ethical business practices. And we have proof of everything, Helena added, showing decades of hidden records. Sterling burst in. Your father's on his way. He's landing at the airport now. Tyler looked up from his phone. Perfect timing. Our live stream has 50,000 viewers. The mansion's security cameras showed a black car approaching. James hadn't seen his father in 10 years. Play the final video, Helena said. Victoria left it for this moment. On screen, Victoria looked directly at the camera. Richard, my dear ex-husband, if you're watching this, James has finally chosen his path, the one you tried so hard to prevent. James's father walked into the study. Richard Blackwood looked older but just as imposing. You're throwing away everything I built for you, he said to James. No, James replied. I'm choosing what Mom built instead. Tyler pointed his camera at his grandfather. Want to explain why you tried to destroy a community center? Richard laughed. You think some viral videos scare me? No, Sarah stepped forward. But this should. She opened Victoria's files on the big screen. Every corrupt deal, every manipulated contract, every broken law. Victoria had documented everything. Mom didn't just leave evidence, Sarah continued. She left it with every major news outlet. If anything happens to these projects, it all goes public. Richard's face hardened. James signed a contract. He belongs in my world. A contract based on fraud, Helena added. I should know. I used to write them for you. Tyler's live stream comments exploded. People shared stories of how Richard's companies had hurt their communities. How Victoria's projects had helped rebuild them. There's another way, James said to his father. Look at the numbers. Mom's model makes more money than yours, and it helps people. Sterling walked in, but something had changed. Sir, our investors are watching the live stream. They're asking questions. Richard grabbed the papers from the safe, then froze. Victoria had included a personal letter to him. Read it, James said. Like I read Mom's diary, the letter was simple. Richard, you taught our son that success means taking from others. I taught him it means lifting others up. Let's see which lesson lasts. Tyler turned to his grandfather. Want to know the difference between your business and Grandma's? Check the comments. People are offering to invest in our projects. What are they saying about yours? Richard's phone buzzed constantly. Investors demanded explanations. Board members threatened to resign. It's over, Dad, James said. But you can still choose a different way. Sarah showed more of Victoria's plans. These social enterprises? They could transform your companies too. Mom planned for that. Richard looked at his grandson, still live streaming. At the community members filling the mansion. At the evidence of his own failures. The prison plan is canceled, he announced. Sterling, make it happen. But Tyler wasn't done. That's not enough, grandfather. People are watching. What else will you change? Victoria's final diary entry said it perfectly. Richard will face a choice too. Our son will show him what real success looks like. And just maybe, our grandson will show them both what real legacy means. The mansion buzzed with energy. News crews arrived, community members shared their stories. Victoria's network of social enterprises proved that profit and purpose could work together. James watched his son interviewing people, showing the world a new way of doing business. The arrogant teenager had become someone Victoria would have been proud of. And for the first time in decades, James's father was silent, watching, learning. 1 week later, James stood in the mansion's main hall, watching workers install new signs. Victoria Blackwood Center for Social Enterprise. His father's companies were undergoing massive restructuring. Richard had chosen adaptation over destruction, converting his businesses using Victoria's model. The numbers don't lie, Sarah showed James the latest reports. The social enterprises are outperforming traditional businesses in every metric. Tyler and Marcus rushed in. Dad, look at this. They pulled up their latest video, now with millions of views. It showed transformations across the city as Victoria's projects expanded. Your mother built something extraordinary, Richard admitted, reviewing the business plans. I was too blind to see it. Helena brought in more documents. Victoria left instructions for this moment too, plans to scale the model nationally. The community center was thriving. Local businesses pledged support, following Victoria's blueprint for sustainable growth. The job training programs reached full capacity. We're receiving calls from other cities, Sarah said. They want to replicate the model. Tyler had transformed completely. The boy who once mocked scholarship students now mentored them. His social media channel became a platform for sharing success stories. Grandfather, Tyler called to Richard. Want to explain to our viewers how you're changing your companies? Richard faced the camera. I spent decades building wealth by taking from communities. Victoria showed us a better way. Now we're rebuilding those same communities. Sterling joined them, looking humbled. The contractors are ready to start renovating the community center. We're upgrading it, not demolishing it. James found another diary entry, dated just before Victoria's death. My son will face one final challenge, not choosing between good and evil, but between good and better. Between changing his own life and transforming thousands of lives. The mansion buzzed with activity. Each room served a different purpose now. Classrooms, business incubators, community meeting spaces. Victoria's vision coming to life. Look at this, Sarah pointed to the garden. Students from Tyler's school worked alongside community members, expanding the project Victoria started. Helena brought news from the board. They want to implement the social enterprise model across all divisions. Victoria's approach proved more profitable than traditional business. James watched his son leading a group of young entrepreneurs. Tyler explained Victoria's model with passion and understanding. The arrogant teenager had become a leader. Your mother left one more video, Helena said. She said to play it when the garden reached full bloom. On screen, Victoria smiled. James, if you're watching this, you've done more than save the mansion. You've proven that business can be a force for good, that profit and purpose can work together. Richard studied the financial reports. All those years fighting Victoria's ideas, she built something better than I ever did. Tyler's phone kept buzzing with notifications. More success stories, more communities wanting to implement the model, more lives being transformed. Dad, Tyler called out. The governor's office called. They want to use our model for statewide programs. Sarah showed more of Victoria's plans. Mom designed this to spread. Each success creates opportunities for more success. James looked at his father, now actively engaged in converting his old businesses. At his son teaching others about sustainable enterprise. At his sister, expanding the programs that changed her life. The final diary entry read, My fortune didn't disappear, it multiplied. Every dollar invested in people returns more than any stock market ever could. James will understand this, and through him, others will learn too. Victoria's legacy wasn't just the mansion or the social enterprises, it was the transformation of 3 generations, from Richard's greed to James's awakening to Tyler's leadership. Helena handed James one last envelope. Victoria said to open this when you were ready to take the next step. The garden bloomed with new life, just as Victoria had planned. just as her greater plan was blooming across the city. 1 year later, the Victoria Blackwood Center buzzed with activity as hundreds gathered for its first anniversary. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth, had become the heart of a movement. James adjusted his name tag. James Blackwood, Executive Director, Social Enterprise Institute. No more expensive suits or luxury cars. He'd found something better. "Dad," Tyler called from the stage. "We're ready for your speech." Looking at the audience, James saw faces that told the story of Victoria's vision. Marcus, now heading the youth leadership program. Sarah, directing a network of community centers across 3 states. Helena, training other companies to adopt the social enterprise model. And in the back row, Richard Blackwood sat quietly. The ruthless businessman had become one of their strongest advocates, using his connections to spread Victoria's model nationwide. "A year ago," James began, "I thought I'd lost my inheritance. Today, I understand what real wealth means." The screens behind him showed images from their journey. The empty bank accounts that started everything. Tyler's first viral video, the community coming together to save their center, each moment part of Victoria's carefully crafted plan. "My mother didn't leave us money," James continued. "She left us a blueprint for changing lives." The numbers told an incredible story. The social enterprises had created thousands of jobs. The education programs boasted a 95% success rate. The community projects generated triple the return of traditional investments. Tyler, now a freshman in college, studying social entrepreneurship, stepped up to share their latest initiative. His social media channel had evolved into a platform teaching young people about sustainable business. "Grandma showed us that doing good is good business," Tyler explained. "Our new youth enterprise program has already launched 50 student-led social businesses." The audience included CEOs, government officials, and community leaders, all there to learn Victoria's model. But the most important guests were the families whose lives had changed. Maria, a single mother who'd gone through their job training program, now managed 3 sustainable businesses. Kevin, a former student from James's teaching days, ran the education division. Each success story proved Victoria right. Sterling, who'd completely transformed his real estate company, presented their expansion plans. "We're converting abandoned properties into community enterprise zones. Victoria's model works better than luxury developments ever did." Sarah shared updates on their national growth. 20 cities have adopted our program. The waiting list keeps growing. Victoria's vision is spreading faster than we can keep up. The garden, now a thriving urban farm, supplied local restaurants while training new entrepreneurs. The greenhouse where James had found the hidden safe hosted classes in sustainable agriculture. Richard took the stage, a moment nobody could have predicted a year ago. "I spent decades teaching my son the wrong lessons about success. Victoria knew better. She showed us that true wealth multiplies when shared." Helena revealed Victoria's final gift, a series of videos she'd recorded for future generations. She knew this day would come, when her ideas would spread beyond our city. The first video played on the big screen, Victoria looking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, the transformation has begun, but this is just the start." James watched his son coordinate with other young leaders, organizing the next phase of their work. Tyler had exceeded everyone's expectations, turning his social media influence into real social change. "Your mother would be proud," Helena said softly. "Not just of the businesses, but of how you've all changed." The evidence was everywhere. Richard mentoring young entrepreneurs instead of exploiting them. Sterling building community spaces instead of tearing them down. Tyler teaching privileged kids about social responsibility. The mansion itself told the story. Every room served the community. The study where James had found the diary was now a classroom. The garden where Tyler had mocked Marcus hosted youth leadership programs. "We have an announcement," Sarah called everyone's attention. The governor just signed the Social Enterprise Initiative into law. Victoria's model will be taught in every state school. James remembered that moment a year ago when he'd thought he'd lost everything. Now he understood. Victoria hadn't emptied her accounts. She'd invested in something far more valuable. New faces filled the mansion daily. Students learning sustainable business practices. Community members building better futures. business leaders studying a model that proved profit and purpose could coexist. "Dad," Tyler pulled James aside. "Remember when I used to think Grandma was crazy for giving away her money? Now I understand what she really gave us." The final video from Victoria played. "My dearest family, money can build empires of greed or networks of hope. I chose hope, and now you have too." Richard joined them, watching the community his greed had once threatened to destroy. "Your mother built something I never could, James. She built legacy that grows stronger with each life it touches." The day ended with a surprise. The State University announced the Victoria Blackwood School of Social Enterprise, with James as its first dean. His journey from teacher to businessman had come full circle. In the garden, under the stars, the family gathered. James, the son who learned to measure wealth in lives, changed. Tyler, the grandson who carried Victoria's vision to a new generation. Sarah, the daughter who proved family goes beyond blood. Richard, the man who learned it's never too late to change. Helena brought out Victoria's diary, now published as a guide for social entrepreneurs. She wrote this last entry the day before she died. James read it aloud. "Money fills banks, but purpose fills lives. I leave you not with full accounts, but with full hearts. Build something beautiful with this truth." The mansion lights glowed warmly, welcoming another evening of classes, meetings, and community gatherings. Victoria's empty bank accounts had seeded a forest of opportunity, growing stronger with each passing day. As Tyler led a group of young entrepreneurs through their plans, James saw his mother's smile in his son's passion for helping others. The inheritance hadn't vanished. It had multiplied beyond measure. The security cameras that had once caught Tyler mocking the mansion now streamed educational content worldwide. The safe that had hidden Victoria's evidence now stored students' business plans. Even Sterling's son had joined their cause, leading sustainable development projects. "A reporter asked me today," Tyler said, "what made our models so successful. I told him it was simple. Grandma proved that the best way to help yourself is to help others first." The night ended with a tradition Victoria would have loved. Each person shared how the center had changed their life, from homeless to business owner, from dropout to teacher, from cynical heir to passionate advocate. James held his mother's diary, thinking of that day he discovered the empty accounts. Victoria hadn't left him nothing. She'd left him everything that truly mattered. Above his desk hung the words that now guided thousands. "True wealth grows when shared. True power lifts others up. True legacy lives in the lives we change." The mansion that James had once hoped to sell now anchored a movement. The money he'd thought was his inheritance had built something far more valuable, and the mother he'd underestimated had become a beacon for future generations. As the last guests left, Tyler turned to his father. "Ready for tomorrow, Dad? We've got 3 new centers opening." James smiled. Victoria's greatest gift hadn't been her money. It had been the chance to become the person he was meant to be. The lights dimmed, but the mansion's heart beat stronger than ever. In offices, classrooms, and communities across the country, Victoria's legacy continued to grow. Not in bank accounts, but in lives transformed. Not in buildings, but in dreams realized. Not in profits, but in purpose fulfilled. The empty accounts that had once seemed like an ending had been just the beginning. Victoria's last lesson had taught them all what true wealth really means. If Victoria's story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you discovered your inheritance wasn't money, but a chance to change lives? Join our growing community of storytellers by subscribing to our channel. There are many more powerful stories waiting to be told. Remember, true wealth isn't measured by what we have in our bank accounts, but by how many lives we touch along the way.